Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of the Divided Films finale. Just a reminder, if you don't remember from the first 74 episodes, my name is JJ, and with me, as always, is my co-host Keith.
Hello!
And here we are. We're standing at the end here. It's the light at the end of the tunnel here, Keith. This is our 70. We had to end on a good number, right? 75 episodes, I think. I'm very satisfied with that.
That's all good things come to an end, and this was definitely. I'm so honored you presented this idea to me, because I was always cautious about doing a podcast, but then you suggested this idea to me, and I didn't even hesitate. I said, let's do it. And we learned we learned a lot about each other, which we did, but we learned a lot about I think I've become a better film reviewer, a better podcaster, and also a better friend.
Yeah, I think I've gone better at speaking, I suppose, because I don't know about you. I'm sure you have also, like, just from editing and me just listening to the episodes as we prepare them for release. I always try to see little ways I can improve and be a better, not just podcaster, but that's better, how to be more articulate. Yeah. And, so far, I guess, so good. Sometimes that escapes me. But, I think this podcast has been a lot of fun. And, we might return to it one day, or who knows, maybe explore some other podcast ideas. Let's just leave that out there in the universe. And
there will always be divided films. There will be. I will like to say, though, and this might be the little bit ego, I've always been satisfied with the results of our the score that we have settled on, and I kind of feel like the score that we settled on really is how society really feels about it, and I'm not. It's just how I feel.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a case where we were like drastically different from the overall consensus, right? Because I think with having movies scored with a critical score and an audience score, those are like the two extremes, and usually most people fall somewhere in the middle, right? And I think that it's good to kind of have your finger on like a more general opinion, because it's the critics have their opinion, and then the audiences, it's specific people who go on to Rotten Tomatoes to rate movies, and it's not reflective of all audience members. It's a general gauge. So I like that we can maybe contextualize a lot of these opinions and kind of come to a more universal conclusion on a lot of them. So that's kind of been the most satisfying thing, aside from being able to talk to you on a weekly basis, Keith.
Yeah. I think we've been doing the podcast just as long as we lived with each other, or maybe even a little bit longer. But I just kind of this is basically, we renewed our friendship lease.
Well, you know what? That lease is always available to renew again. So anytime we want to do that, we'll do that. So here we go. We're continuing our topic here on divided trends, right? So in the part 1, we're talking about different kinds of adaptations that tend to be divided. So musicals adapted into film, video games adapted into film, those tend to be divided. So now we're going to talk about different kinds of movie revivals, right? Like franchises that are brought back, but in different ways, different kinds of spins. And these kind of movies also tend to be divided. So the first of these that we're going to discuss is what I kind of call, I guess this is maybe like an unofficial classification, but the gender swap revamp, right?
You go, girl.
So we're talking about movies that have been brought back within the last 5 or 10 years of older franchises, but the new twist is that now we have female leads, whereas the original versions of these movies had male leads. And again, these tend to be divided. So there's a few different kind of movies like that, like say like Ocean's 8 or The Hustle, but the ones that we're going to discuss for this episode, we're going to be going over Ghostbusters and then Men in Black International. So let's start with Ghostbusters, the 2016 revival. So this movie has a fresh score with critics and a negative score with audiences. So Rotten Tomatoes, 73% of critics approved, 49% of audiences approved, and the critics' consensus: Ghostbusters does an impressive job of standing on its own as a freewheeling, marvelously cast supernatural comedy, even if it can't help but pale somewhat in comparison with the classic original. And boy, does it pale, I would say. I think this is very kind of dicey thing to bring back an old franchise. Like this Ghostbusters movie was made like, I would say 25-ish years after the second one, maybe like a little longer. And, it's just, I think that's always a little suspect whenever you see an old movie franchise brought back and they try to put a new spin on it. And this was, kind of an underwhelming example, the 2016 Ghostbusters. What was your experience with that movie, Keith?
Well, it's like, this movie's a good lesson in like, there was so much hullabaloo, and I think I'm using that word right, hullabaloo, around this movie, that when people finally saw it, it was just like, oh really? People went nuts over this? Like and I don't mean that in like any which way. I don't mean it complimentary. I don't mean it like insultingly. It's like, wow, people really went like ape shit over this movie. That really this? I would say where this movie fits for me, it's just, I never really knew Ghostbusters to be like gendered specific, like a male thing. And I have no problem, like all four women are hilarious. Paul Feig is a fantastic comedic director. Like all the people involved in this movie have done talented stuff. I don't know why,
Absolutely.
If they were going to do a Ghostbusters movie, they completely like it's like set in another universe almost. Like it's
Yeah.
it's not a it's not a passing of the torch, what
No.
Ghostbusters Afterlife did. It's not. It's kind of. It's also a remake of the first movie in a lot of ways. Like they kind of hit the same beats. They were setting up a Ghostbusters cinematic universe. Sony was. I don't know. It's this movie's bizarre in like studio.
Yeah.
In the studio, it's a bizarre. Excuse me. It's a bizarre study.
Well, I agree that I'm not against the idea of having an all-female Ghostbusters. That's neither here nor there, but it comes down to the execution, the writing. It's not funny, and the story is not interesting. And it's like one of those things that a lot of bad comedies do, where they just depend on the talent to elevate the material, but there's just nothing there. Right? I laughed one time in this movie, just once, and that is like, I think in the beginning when Gabe is like, "Oh, that person you just talked to was dead," and Kristen Wiig is like, "What?" And then Gabe is like, "Oh, well, you must have been talking to his grandson then." Like that's like the one time I like smirked. And that was like in the first 5 minutes. I didn't like even smile or chuckle, nothing for the rest of this movie. It was like a lot of bad comedy. And, like let Kate McKinnon be weird. Let Melissa McCarthy be aggressive, right? Let Kristen Wiig be kind of awkward. It's like, that can work, but, you need like an actually interesting story for that to happen.
Well, yeah, you need characters like and you like it's hard to like you have to compare this to the original Ghostbusters in a lot of ways, because it does, as I said before, it does follow the same exact beats. It doesn't do a completely different story. Like all the ghosts are flying around New York in the end. Slimer, they even do Zool. Like it's like, Jesus, what is going on here? But everyone is, and I know we're not the first people to say this, no one to say cut. No one to say cut. A lot of these scenes feel like I'm watching like improv go on way too long.
Oh, especially the Chris Hemsworth stuff. I mean, I didn't understand his character at all, except I guess he's dumb. But like, it's like one of those things where they think if they let the shot go on longer, it'll somehow like force a laugh or something.
Like it'll come back again or something.
Right, but it was just no. It's in no man's land. It just doesn't work, and it's unfortunate because these are very talented people. I mean,
yeah.
My argument too is that instead of doing like a hand-me-down and like giving these female actresses like a franchise that was done by guys, give them their own original franchises, and when that's been done, it's like a lot more successful. Case in point, Bridesmaids, but also The Heat with Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy, like
the same team basically, almost like
like these, when they're given like new material, it can be like really great. Why have them do material that's already been done? Because again, like you suffer from comparison, like that's a disadvantage to begin with. But then also, from what we see in the results, it's just, they rely maybe too much on the familiarity of the franchise.
Well, we can get into that. I mean, that's such a whole other thing. Like, you could do a paranormal investigation show with these four girls, and it can be a completely different thing. It could be a paranormal comedy that isn't Ghostbusters. Like it,
yeah,
and it. I think now, I can't think of who said it, but I think now actresses are starting to say, like, let's not do what the guys did. Let's create our own characters, because Ocean's 11, The Hustler. Like, I'm sorry, but millennials and Gen Zs do not know what like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is. Not many of them have seen it. It's a great movie, but it's still, that's not like what the kids are itching to see. Or even Ocean's 8. Like, just do a caper. Do a caper with Sandra Bullock. Like, it's so bizarre.
Yeah, I would love that.
And I used to hear that, like, you were guaranteed, like, $20 million on the name alone. Well, that's certainly not true now. Like, that is totally not true. Maybe with Ghostbusters, yes, but not with, like, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, or even, I don't even think Ocean's 8 did that well. But, yeah, no, this is like my second or third time seeing this movie, and this movie had to be cut in such a way because like Charles Dance only has 2 scenes. Michael K. Williams and Matt Walsh feel like they had like this whole. I saw behind the scenes footage of them like actually dancing, like they were so underutilized.
Oh my gosh, probably. I love Charles Dance. Just because, I just love like his work in Game of Thrones, and for him to be in this and wasted, like, why did you waste his time putting him in this movie where he has like nothing to contribute? You're right, he's like in like 2 scenes. That was like, totally pointless. The whole plot with like the bad guy and everything, I just didn't care, and the effects to me were like almost a little too overwhelming. Like they were like so bright and so over the top, right? Like there was like a disconnect for me. Everything about it felt so overly produced that there was no creativity involved at all.
And to compare it to the original Ghostbusters, you look at all the different kinds of ghosts of practical effects, and there's something there's that gloss. Maybe I'm using the right word. There's that gloss that's on CGI nowadays. Like, they're on a set, like that, especially during that last action scene where like they're basically surrounded by fog. And I imagine like the average Ghostbuster fan is like, why the bad guy is like an internet troll, misogynist,
an
incel who turns into the ghost, the icon, and they shoot him in the it's kind of like a franchise at war with itself. Like, it doesn't want to be a Ghostbusters movie. Well, then don't be a Ghostbusters movie. And it
doesn't have to be. No one asked for another Ghostbusters movie.
Did you see
did
you see the new one?
Maybe they did. I did not see the recent one, but
it's fine.
I heard that was fine, right? I heard that was like a little better, fine. I guess some people asked for another Ghostbusters, but they should have been ignored, okay? Like, stop bringing back these old franchises. Like, let's get more new material in here.
They could have done like a very, like I will never for the life of me understand why like you bring back all the original Ghostbuster cast and just recast them as different roles instead of just like not even a cameo going like, wow, those girls did it better than they got their shit together more than we did, instead of like, or a passing of the torch.
Right. That is such also a calling card of what I call like the gender swap revamp, is that you have cameos of the original cast, but it's just weird because it's not a sequel, so it's not the same characters. It's like they're just there to remind you that they were the original cast, but like what kind of wink at the camera is that? Like it would be better if it was a sort of sequel and there was more of a tie-in, like they played the same characters, but like what's the point then of just having them there as themselves basically?
Yeah, no, it's a perplexing, and it sucks that like if you even talk about this movie, you're like,
Sexist.
yeah, no, I hate and I'm sure there's assholes out there, but I hate the discourse that was around this movie where, yeah, it's like seeing The Interview. Oh my God, I get to finally see The Interview that like North Korea went nuts over, and you see it and you're like, that was,
what's the big deal?
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is it. Like,
right. Like I just, if anything, like I like these actresses. I think if, there could have been a good version of this movie if it was done with a more original storytelling. But yeah, I hate to see their talent wasted.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they are so funny.
I feel like everyone's trying to be funny too. That's a problem. No one is the straight man.
Yeah, it's a bit of a competition.
Exactly.
I agree. I guess if anything, maybe Kristen Wiig is more of the straight person in this.
She had to be, but like, it just.
Chris Hemsworth didn't need to be funny. Like they cast him as like the dummy.
He was too stupid.
Like why even?
He was too stupid.
It wasn't funny. It was just confusing. Like why is he so dumb? He's not saying anything funny. He's just sitting there with a stupid smile on his face.
But he does stupid right though, and I haven't seen the new Thor, so but like I always appreciate like Thor's cockiness as like or kind of stupid, and he always was good in that kind of humor. But I do think acting stupid, it's not easy. Like there's a skill to it. There are actors that do it very well, like I think Chris Pratt, and there are actors who are very like, and Joey's like the sliding. I call it the Joey line, because at least like
Joey
Tribbiani line, because at one point it gets to like, all right, you're kind of charming, to like, how do you even function?
Right, like, how do you get things done?
Like right. But so like this one was just
annoying. You have to be dumb. Like any other comedy, it has to be something that's not expected. You can't see it. You can't see the joke coming for it to work. And Chris Hemsworth is dumb in the most predictable ways that, at the same time, don't make any sense. Like you're right. There's funny ways to be dumb, but you have to find new ways to be dumb that we haven't seen before. Yeah. And they don't do that here.
I'm very curious. I'm very curious to read the script and then see how much of it is not in the movie. Like I bet you like that. Like, oh, just improv. I like just go. We'll edit it in post, and the editor's like, I don't know what to do here. I really don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the critics did like this. Like it's 73% is nothing to sneeze at, and I think it may be a case of wanting it to be good, right? Like you root for this movie to be good, and I think it's kind of like maybe like the train wreck thing where you have a genre that is traditionally dominated by men, and now you have a female lead or a female ensemble. So you're rooting for it. You want it to be good. You don't want to shoot that down by negatively reviewing it. But yeah, you should aim higher than this. I think the fact that this does aim lower, it just is settling for mediocrity. I think that hurts the cause for more female-led franchises. It's not the idea of female-led franchises. It's just they deserve better.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I'm not including superheroes in this conversation. Like, okay, it's nice to have Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, Black Widow. It's nice to really have them on screen and see the actors playing them. But like, I'm itching for like a Ripley or a Sarah Connor. And like, I guess like in recent years, the only person that we got is like 11. That's the only one I really could compare it to, and maybe Michelle Yeoh. But I think time needs to have its way with that movie first, and it needs to, it needs to marinate for a few years. But 11 definitely is like a great female character, like original.
Yeah.
Inspired by, but like original.
Yeah, it's too bad because I'm trying to think too. Like I agree. I want to see more genres that are done differently, led with more leading actresses. So like, like I said, I mentioned the Heat, buddy comedy, but then it seemed like Melissa McCarthy was doing the same kind of character in so many other movies. That was kind of like overdone, and people got tired of that, which is a shame because
I liked Spy. I thought that was
Spy is great.
That was a funny movie, and that
Spy is really funny.
Like I don't know why they didn't do it, and that's why Ghostbusters is. But perplexing.
She's playing a different kind of. She's playing a different kind of character in that. She starts off more meek and unsure of herself, and it has to work her way up. That is different, and I don't know. That movie was like the anomaly, basically, with the rest of where her career was going. So there's so much potential that is being missed there. It's frustrating.
And one thing that and maybe it's just Bill Murray, but like one thing that movies shouldn't be afraid of is like it's okay for your characters to be kind of an asshole. Like I'm not talking about like just smoking on set or smoking on in the movie, but it's like the only reason the Ghostbusters start is because they want to make money from it. Like they want, it's more of a capitalistic, like there's themes of that happening in it, and I'm sure if they were to make a third one in like the 90s, it would have been like a franchise or something like that. But it's okay to make. I mean, Bill Murray has the charm, but so does I think Melissa McCarthy. I think all those actresses have that certain charm, but they all were alike. They were all on the same page, trying to be the funny one, and maybe they're like a different kind of funny. But you needed the straight person. You need like Egon, Harold Ramis, is funny because he's funny in his delivery. He's not like trying to make jokes. He's like. Why don't we try one without the puppy? Do you know what I mean? Like it's
well, they all have like little moments here and there to be funny, but it's like, yeah, it's done more like thoughtfully, where like it's not all at once, right? Like there's scenes in this movie where they're all like throwing jokes at you at one time, and it's like you don't even know you don't know which character to focus on. There needs to be like a little more thoughtfulness as to like how to distribute the the screen time and the comedic moments between each character in a unique, memorable way. Just comedy 101, people. Not that I would know.
Yeah.
But again, to me it was interesting that the critics liked it, but again, I think that they were trying to. I think that they went into it maybe like
we've seen this with movies before that we've done, and to quote past episodes, this is like War of the Worlds or Trainwreck, as you said. Like we want it to be good.
Yeah, exactly. And then now we just to transition to the other movie in this category, Men in Black International, that gets divided the other way, and I'm interested into kind of dissecting why.
Yeah.
Right, and so this movie, Men in Black International. Very low score with the critics, 23%, and like a decent fresh score with audiences, 66%, but still like a pretty big difference. And the consensus, amiable yet forgettable, MIB International grinds its stars' substantial chemistry through the gears of a franchise running low on reasons to continue. And I pretty much agree with a lot of that consensus. I had like a moment watching this movie thinking to myself, like, is there anything left to explore in this world of Men in Black? It seems like it has run its course.
That's so bizarre. In a world of like monitoring aliens and getting the bad ones, and they're kind of. That's bizarre. We're only 4 movies and we're done. And you're kind of right. You're kind of right. But it's so bizarre.
Also, the amiable but forgettable, definitely forgettable. I have a hard time remembering a lot of the story in this movie, and it's because again they went for a lot of just generic story elements. Again, someone within the good guy camp who actually is the traitor, and it's not the person you are supposed to believe it is, right? And it's like, okay, I saw that coming from a mile away. But I just don't care.
Yeah, well, they
And
set up like the asshole. He's the bad guy, but he's actually like the
see,
good guy, and like, yeah, I'm just kind of. Also, I had no idea who the hell the Hive was. Like, they really did not develop this villain at all, and that's the first one is so perfect. Like what they do with Edgar is like, oh my god! But like the first one to me is a 10 out of 10, a perfect film.
well, again, and it's deviated so far from what made that first one so unique. I mean, basically in that first movie, it's like aliens exist, it's no big deal. And that was unique at the time because in every other movie about aliens, it's a big deal that there's aliens. I mean, even a year prior, Will Smith was in Independence Day, and it's like all the big spectacle. And so for that movie to really give a new sort of nonchalant take on it was so unique. And now here we are, like over 20 years later, and it feels like any other alien movie. And that's like such a shame for a franchise that made its name turning the tables on the alien franchise, or the alien genre, I should say.
Yeah.
It's again, there's like a disconnect there.
I think.
I mean, if you look at if you look at the franchise through each chapter, right? Like the first one is a classic, right? Very rewatchable. The second one was a big disappointment. And then the third one was a modest surprise. I thought that one was like, was good.
Added
surprisingly.
a breath of fresh air to like. They showed that they weren't done.
Right, there was still something left.
There's still some
but now
life.
in this fourth one, I didn't feel like there was really any life yet, which is interesting because it seemed like they were setting up for a new trilogy with this pair.
Yeah, it's so bizarre because I do think, this is actually where I do appreciate Chris Hemsworth's buffoon, like his act. I'm like, okay, the buffoonery. I thought they got along very well. I think they actually kind of were, Tessa's the straight person and Chris is the the macho man. I think they worked well together. They have worked before, so they had that chemistry.
Right.
This all falls on the writing. It all falls on the script for me. And yeah, no, it didn't offer anything. I was shocked that like she should have already, I'm kind of rewriting a better movie in my head right now, but like she should have already been a member of the Men in Black.
I had the same exact thought.
Like, we are wasting so much time, and Emma Thompson is just like, okay, you're a member. Meanwhile, when Will Smith got it, and the thing is, you have to compare it to the original. When Will Smith got it, there are some memorable scenes of him taking the table. Like his training scene was like, as it's part of the film.
Right. It's again a lot of unexpected moments. It's got that very like self-aware humor to it. And in this version, you're right. There's no reason to have that whole bit. First of all, it's very easy for her to discover the Men in Black, where they are, become a member. It seemed like anyone who has the slightest interest in aliens and the slightest suspicion that there's a government-run agency that handles aliens would be able to become a member and be able to like discover where they are. Just waltz right in. And you're right. You could have cut all that out and just have her just already like starting. Like it's her first day.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you start the movie.
It's
excellent. Her first day. She's already there because that whole everything about her getting there was completely uninteresting.
And you can also
you're gonna get there.
Have the same backstory. Like you don't have to change a damn thing about her parents, about the alien that she met. Like you don't have to change a damn thing. But I feel like I was so like I wasn't. I guess I was bored by this movie, but I was more in shock because I was curious to see this, and I was a bit like, oh, how bad could it be? And it's bad in the way that like in your scale of like it's like, oh man, not only did they like such a missed opportunity of potential, but like it's kind of boring.
It is. It's forgettable bad, right? And that's a real shame because the original movie is so memorable that like we still watch it 25 years later. It still holds up, and this one definitely not so much. I mean, trying to look back. The audiences, they did like it, to a degree, 66%, and maybe just because it follows the familiar beats of not even Men in Black, but just of, like it follows a very formulaic plot structure. It has like the feel of a comedy, I guess. There are jokes that didn't work for me, but there are jokes in there. Like you had the Pawnee character by Kunal.
Yeah, he was the comic. Yeah, and
okay. But that character didn't work at all for me either. Like there's nothing funny about any of his lines for me. It just, I was so uninterested the whole time.
I think just like at one point I was trying to understand the story, which I think the story definitely came first over the characters, 100%. But the story was so confusing, or at least like convoluted in a way that it's just like it was predictable, but also, like once again, like Edgar the Cockroach is a great villain because we also get to spend time with him. If they're trying to like show us that Liam Neeson is like the bad, like I have no idea who the Hive is until like the end, and it's just like, oh yeah, like just the ex-girlfriend. Like it really is kind of a scavenger hunt where we have like, okay, now we go to this set piece, now we go to this set piece, and I'm so jaded by CGI at this point where I miss
me too.
I miss makeup and practical effects, and Rick Baker
I can't help
did the Men in Black makeup, who's excellent.
Right. I can't help, like, when I watch these CGI stuff movies, that I like, all I can imagine are the actors on set looking at nothing. That's all I see when I see like a CGI fest. But it is a shame, and because I like these actors, and again I like the idea of following, like, again, like let's diversify the cast a bit. Like let's follow like a woman in black, and just to mix it up, and like if in an alternate universe where Linda Florentino does not have all like the controversy and craziness, and she's able to continue having a Hollywood career, I would think Men in Black 2 would have continued the story of her and Will Smith's partnership, and that you could have had what maybe this movie was striving for. But alas, we that is not the universe we live in. So another thing, it was the thing from Captain Marvel where the supposed bad guys are actually the victims of a different bad guy, and that's another twist. But again, at that point I was just kind of watching the time.
I think what they thought they were doing differently was like, okay, the first three Men in Blacks have for the most 95% of the movies, it's a New York film. How do we breathe some fresh life into this? Okay, we make Tessa Thompson, Woman in Black, but we make it international, and it's like, okay, you got the first part right. That's a breath of fresh air. But maybe instead of travel hopping, how about you do something that, like, I don't know. One idea that just popped in my head is just like, what if you have an alien who's going to reveal himself to people? Like a cult leader or something like that.
Everyone...
Like you have a group of you have to, like, I'm not saying make it like James Bond, but you have to be a little bit clever with your ideas like this. Where like, it's like, okay, every idea has been done, but what really hasn't been done, or what's relevant right now? And it's just,
yeah, you see, and this one just did what had been done already. They did the joke as well, where like, here are the celebrities that are actually aliens.
Yeah.
Like, we already got that in the original movie. Here's an update. Like, oh, Donald Glover is an alien. Wow, like, didn't see that joke coming.
Actually, I didn't see I'm like, Donald Glover. I'm like, okay, I can see Elon Musk, but whatever. Like, Donald Glover was. They really focused on Donald Glover being an alien.
Right, like you can make that joke about literally any celebrity, because all celebrities are a little weird. But there you have it. So yeah, at the end of the day, these kinds of movies where they revitalize an old franchise and they swap out a male lead for a female lead, it just kind of, it's like a half-baked idea. Like that is not enough to sustain or warrant a movie being made, and it all almost comes across as gimmicky.
Oh, I think, and this is like, I think they're just, this might be a surprise cynicism, but they're like, they want to have their cake. The studios want to have their cake and eat it too. They want, like, we are progressive and giving females the lead, but like, we're just doing this because we think we know, like, we think this will make money. We're doing the right thing. Like, we are like, and so we don't really have to put that much thought into, like, what IPs do we have? Can we make Harry Potter a girl? And can we, like, instead of creating a new idea with new characters, let's just settle. And I would forgive that if, like, they did like what Blade Runner 2049 did to Blade Runner. Make it a totally unique story in the world. Don't rehash the same beats of the first story that we know. And I know Men in Black International didn't, but we've seen that in other stories, as we said.
Yeah, exactly. And we can only hope that eventually they run out of franchises to revitalize, and they have to eventually go back to making original content.
Please, I hope we don't see Robo Girl Cop.
Robo Waitress.
Like, I hope we don't see, like I just, that's when I know I'm living in a satire.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what this kind of thing needs to put an end to it once and for all, is like something so outrageously, anti that sort of trend that, we won't see it ever again. If there's one kind of adaptation, one kind of revamp that I find more annoying than the gender swap, it is the next topic we're discussing, our last topic, which is the Disney live action remakes. There's been so many of them, and they're still coming. The two that we're going to discuss, actually, I believe came out in the same year. Aladdin and The Lion King. And I think these two are basically the epitome of this trend of live action remakes, and what I feel like doesn't really work about, what doesn't really work about redoing it this way. So let's start with Aladdin, the worser of the two evils, I would argue.
Yeah, I would agree.
So Aladdin falls into the category of having a negative score with critics, 57%. So, like, they don't like it, but they don't hate it. But a 94% with audiences. They loved it. And I have to really wrap my brain around that. That's a tough one for me to reconcile. But here we go. So the critics' consensus for Aladdin retells its classic source material story with sufficient spectacle and skill, even if it never approaches the dazzling splendor of the animated original. Sufficient, I disagree with that. Nothing about this movie is sufficient to me. This was really actually kind of hard for me to watch, actually. I thought Aladdin, this remake, was so bad, I could not watch it in one sitting.
Really?
I found myself pausing so much because I was cringing so much, just from the really bad comedy to the really bad reimagining of the musical numbers, the really wooden acting, and the production value. This movie, and I also have to go back to Mulan as well, like the production of these two movies feel like something from like a children's theater company, from the overly colorful costumes to the sets that look like they're an amusement park or something. It all looks like it's catered to just little kids. It's visually, to me, unappealing. And that's like the antithesis of what made those movies so amazing when they were animated, because they were like stunning visually. And it's like they went the complete opposite. So I actually really strongly dislike this, and also The Lion King, but for other reasons.
I liked it. No, no, I'm joking. No,
that's it.
This is probably the most cynical trend of the four, I would say, just because, like, in the beginning, they came out with Cinderella and Jungle Book, and those were what I would call like reimaginings. Like Jungle Book, the cartoon really was like more vignettes. It didn't have a plot. It added a plot plus, I would say, groundbreaking special effects, made for an enjoyable story. Cinderella was just like another like a beautifully told reimagining with really good acting. And Disney basically hit the jackpot at a casino, and they got a high from it, saying like, all right, what can we do? Okay, 90s Renaissance, baby. Let's go. Okay, we got Beauty and the
It's guaranteed money.
$1 billion. Both of these movies, plus Beauty and the Beast, Jungle Book before it, hit $1 billion. And
come on, people, stop supporting this kind of.
And you
movie
also have
making.
like, I remember, like they're not going to support like Lady and the Tramp, which I forgot they did a live action remake of that. But first movie straight to Disney
straight to
Plus,
streaming,
and so is the new Pinocchio. That's going straight to Disney Plus. So that might be telling there.
Well, actually, if you think about it, the very first one, if you had to go way, way back, the 1996 101 Dalmatians with Glenn Close.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
I was a kid. I enjoyed it. She was
2010
great. I remember her being excellent.
Right. She's great as Cruella de Vil, and there's nothing else really about the movie that stands out. But then in 2010, we discussed in another bonus episode the Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, yeah. That made $1 billion,
remake,
too.
which also, that made a ton of money, too. So that might also, that got the ball rolling.
That's the one.
With the continued success, like you mentioned, of Cinderella, the Jungle Book, it really started to pick up. We got Beauty and the Beast. And basically everything is fair game at this point.
But to at least Alice in Wonderland's credit, that was also a reimagining. At least she went back. At least like it was like a mix of like like it was something different enough. And maybe I have a little more respect for that movie just because like you're getting like I'll add Beauty and the Beast to this too. Like you get these movies, you basically get like a blander version of the cartoon that we love. So we're going to go see it mixed in with like an extra song or two to help out with the padding to make it more like not 89 minutes, but like 110, 115. And for the life of me, I will never understand why Guy Ritchie, who is a really good director in like London crime caper and like London crime movies, like he owns that genre. I love The Gentleman. That was a fun movie. I don't know why the hell he's doing Aladdin. He must know somebody. He must have asked for a favor, and it worked out in his favor. It made $1 billion, but there is nothing. He doesn't know how to shoot shoot choreography. He's very. They should have done Return of Jafar or something.
It was really bizarre to me how small scale the whole movie felt. And that kind of goes back to my whole like children's theater sort of feel. It's like, with the exception of A Whole New World, they really don't go anywhere in this movie. And it all feels very limited. Also, like, all the actors, all the characters feel so watered down. I mean, this Jafar is like so uninteresting. I don't understand what they were doing with this Jafar character. He's like so toned down, and it's like the most uninteresting performance ever as a villain. You know, you can have a really fun. I would think if you're Jafar, you would have a lot of fun hamming it up in that movie. And yet they do the opposite with that. And then the biggest point of contention in this is Will Smith as the genie. I was kind of like freaked out by the CGI animation of when he's like the blue genie, because it looks so weird. It's like uncanny valley weird for me. And like I don't know, they made him like beefy. I thought that was really bizarre. They made him like really like muscly, and then they gave him like a love interest at the end. Like what? I didn't get any of that.
What in addition to watering down like Jafar, like you bring in Alan Tudyk to do Iago, and it's just like, okay, you can't do Gilbert Gottfried, but you could make Iago a character instead of a plot device.
Nope.
But when it came to Will Smith, and this is my exact criticism that I had with Suicide Squad, and he's the best part of this movie. He at least has some. It's so weird talking about Will Smith now, but I'm not going to bring up that moment. It's
neither here nor there.
But like he is a charismatic actor, and he is doing something that's different than Robin Williams, which I do appreciate.
Right, and I appreciate. I'm glad that is the case.
It's Will Smith's Genie. I appreciate that.
It's his version of the Genie, but I feel like that they totally mishandled that because they could have done a lot more with like when there's like multiple of him on screen. They only do that like once or twice. They
they don't do anything really that clever with it.
Really they don't really do that much clever with his ability to like transform or to like quickly become different kinds of characters, because you get like a little glimpse of that in some moments, like in the Prince Ali song, but it is really unexplored, and that's another missed opportunity there. So like, you know, you go for him and it almost seemed like he had to be so center stage that all the other actors had to really play it down.
Yeah, it's and because all those other characters in the cartoon, like the father's a character, like everyone has like their characterizations, and I had to laugh at one point just because like I knew what they were going to do with Jasmine, and I'm actually okay with making her more of a character, and in a lot of ways they did it right. But like when she started singing her song the second time, I'm like, wait, what's going on? Like, did she just like freeze time? And it's just like I don't know. The reprise of that was very
that was
awkward
weird
for me, and I just started enough that it made me laugh. But it was just like I don't know why they got Guy Ritchie to because I don't think his style his style, which is once again London crime dialogue, and like he writes his movies too. Like it did not come out in this movie at all. They should have gotten like a Disney director who can help out with choreography and is creative enough. Lin-Manuel Miranda would have been fine. I don't know. It's just someone, as you said, would have been creative with the Genie, would have been it should have been colorful.
It was, well, it was colorful in the wrong way. Like I said, the costumes were so like overly bright. I'm like, what kind? I guess they're trying to go for like sort of a fantasy fairy tale come to life sort of look, but again, that doesn't really look very appealing, and I really resent how pandering this movie seemed to be for little kids, because what made the original versions in the 90s so great is that they were family entertainment. The whole family could enjoy these movies, and I'm not even saying like here's a joke for adults, here's a joke for little kids. Like there are elements that both like the whole family equally enjoys, and that wasn't really taken into consideration here. Now it has a 94% with the audiences, and I guess it's like because it's serviceable. If you go with your kids to the movie theater, depending on the age, I guess they will enjoy this, but I fear that they will only know this version of it because it pales in comparison to the original one. I was getting paranoid, like is this going to be a generation of kids who only know the Will Smith version and do not know the Robin Williams version?
I think with all of the live action ones, and who knows, the Little Mermaid could be something else, but whatever. But I think with Aladdin, it's just, or at least like the movies that we're talking about, it's always better to go back to the original. Every time. It's just I just see the cynicism. It's just like, okay, you're gonna see this movie. Doesn't matter how old you are, you're gonna see it, and you're gonna pay us money, and we're gonna make $1 billion, and we're gonna make more of them, and they're gonna look as soulless as the animals in Lion King. It just like I'm not saying these movies are. At a corporate level, it's made cynically, but I don't want to like. I think the actors gave it their all. I don't want to begrudge anybody, but I don't. It just ends up being a lot of, and this is maybe the trend with all these trends: mediocrity crap. I'd rather have an awful fucking movie than something like this.
Yeah. I did feel like I was watching something that was made in a factory as opposed to something lovingly drawn with hand, by like
like
hand
a
drawn
focus group,
animation.
like, oh, like how did you guys feel about
Yeah,
this scene? Like, oh, maybe this could be
like
like,
made it like a
yeah,
marketing meeting, and I agree. Like with the actors, I don't know how much I can fault them, but again, yeah, I mean, even like the Jasmine character, I feel like they're not really bringing much personality to these. The Sultan was, again, they sucked the life out of that character. I just think they were just shooting for like the safest possible thing to reimagine this movie with. And again, like, okay, well, they got a comedian from the 90s who's like a funny, well-known actor now. Well, of course, Will Smith. Who else was it going to be? But a point that will come up in The Lion King, which is a point I'll make up here too, is that these do not make sense to make live action because the stories themselves lend themselves to animation. Like the character of the genie lends himself to the animated form. And it just like you're just limiting yourself by making a live action version of it. It just makes no sense creatively, only monetarily. And that's going to become more apparent as we transition into The Lion King, which I think made even more money.
yeah. One question I want to ask, and I'm kind of curious, and I might ask it again with The Lion King, but if if this movie was going to be made regardless, and what if they went another path with it? And I'm not saying like Return to Jafar, but what if they like took the character of Aladdin and just kind of gave it a different story? Like it doesn't like it's kind of like what if they took one of the episodes from his like animated show and just turned it into a movie? Like what like Return of Jafar or Prince of King of Thieves? Like what if they took that character and just they took the character of Aladdin and just kind of did something different with it? Would that you're shaking your head, so I'm like, okay, so maybe there's something like the character of Aladdin is very interesting and
Well,
is
what if
worth exploring beyond an origin story.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, what if you did Aladdin, but it's like an Alice in Wonderland thing where it takes place after
Yeah,
the
something like
original
there's something
story.
different than we haven't seen before, and I know it. I can hear people, or at least I can hear Disney saying in my head, it's like, no, but people want to go to the people want to go to what they know. They want to they want to hear a whole new world. They want to hear this. They want to do that. I'm like, but you can hear that already.
Have some faith in your audience to want like to be somewhat challenged or have something new. But even it's offensive to me that they would make it also like so soullessly, like like A Whole New World in this version is sung with like no passion at all. Like that, the original version of A Whole New World is this beautiful song of discovery and a growing romance and exploration, and you hear it in the voice actors. In this version, it's like they're bored. Yeah. there's a total misunderstanding of the original version there, and I think that kind of little snippet sort of sums up what they got wrong about the whole movie. But I think we can move on to The Lion King, which has a very similar divide as Aladdin. 52% with critics, which is a rotten score, 88% with audiences, so a very high fresh score. And the consensus to The Lion King, while it can take pride in its visual achievements, The Lion King is a by-the-numbers retelling that lacks the energy and heart that made the original so beloved, though for some fans that may just be enough. I mean, that could also be the consensus for the Aladdin movie, by the numbers, lacking energy, lacking heart. I mean, yeah, it's all the same, but it's amplified in this movie. I mean, this movie makes the least amount of sense to make live action. I mean, it's not even really live action. It's just CGI, really. But yeah, this was also one that I could not watch in one sitting. These are dead-eyed animals. They have no facial expressions because they're so photorealistic. It makes no sense.
I said to myself, like, I'm like, this is what hell must be like. It just it does make sense for them to make it live action because at least in the mind of a gambling addict, they made $1 billion. You're right. They made the most money they have ever made on this of all the live actions.
And I will admit too, when I saw the trailer for this, the trailer looked good because like they had this big moment where they posted like all the cast and it's like all like huge A-listers. It's like, oh wow, like if all these people are in it, it must be good, right? No, but they had fooled me initially with the way that they presented it. So I understand why it made so much money.
They looked at Jungle Book and said like, okay, we have the technology. Let's make Lion King. And I think the problem with, yeah, no, it's like what you have with animation is you have facial expressions.
Yeah.
The only thing that I think they added that was new was, and they didn't even make Beyonce a character. I like that. I know they probably upped Nala's role, but they didn't make Nala more of a character. But they gave Nala a song.
Well, first of all, like the adult version of Nala only has maybe like less than 10 minutes of screen time, right? Because like they're kids for the first half of the movie, and then the second half of the movie she doesn't show up for much later, right? So like her presence, even though she's like second build in this, she has obviously a very limited presence in the movie.
You're not gonna have Beyonce at the low billing.
No, of course you're not, unless you made it with Beyonce, right? That's the only way you could do that.
Like I'm watching this going like I just want to watch the original. Like this is so. It's not that it's boring. I want to come up with a word that's better than boring because I remember seeing this in theaters. I did see this in theaters because I saw it with cousins. And you're right. There is something to. I didn't go into this movie like a curmudgeon, going like, oh, it's not the original. Because I don't want to be that person. But it was a packed house, and yeah, you're surrounded by families, and kids are laughing, and you don't want to like go up to these kids going, "What are you laughing about? Like, do you not know cinema? Do you not know animated cinema? Like,
you kids are wrong."
Yeah, it's like okay, kids are having fun, but I think there's something missing in this film. And I don't know, maybe we'll discover what it is in the discussion, but it's just like there's something missing, obviously. And it's not facial expressions. It's soul.
For starters, it is probably the most shot for shot of all the remakes. And I find that to be
uninspiring.
Yeah, very pointless. Like, I know, for example, when we were talking about Into the Woods in part 1 of this bonus episode, I was like annoyed by how far away they deviated, but it was the way they deviated. Like, I think if you're going to adapt something, yeah, maybe like you said, put a new spin on it, do some things differently. And, for this to do it so shot for shot, it's like remember how there's like a shot for shot remake of Psycho that was made in like 1999? It's like, well, like why? Like why would you do that unless it was like for like a student project or something? Like we're always going to go back to the original version. So, yeah, I find that to be like tedious because it's exactly what there's no surprises basically.
Do you think? And now there's man, these could get canceled or not made at all. But like I heard they're making like a Scar prequel or something. I guess based on Cruella. And I'm like, no, that's not. Can we not do this? Can we like? Cause I don't know.
I don't know if there's a Scar prequel. That I don't know where you would go with that.
I had to ask myself during this film, and the same could easily apply to the cartoon. Scar must have hated. At what point do you go like, I don't want to be king anymore? I got to be king. I'm happy to do it for a year, but this job is tough. My reign is coming. My reign is awful. I don't want to be king anymore. You could have it.
Yeah. Well, that's how evil he is. He's willing to let people starve.
And I'll ask what I asked with Aladdin. Like if they did, I know they did a sequel to Lion King that was based off like
Romeo and Juliet.
And maybe we don't have to go that route, but we could look at something like, we could do something different with the Lion King instead of this one. Yes, is way more shot for shot.
Well, I had an idea. What if you remade this? This would never get made, but this is just throwing this out there. What if you remade the Lion King live action, but with no dialogue? It is just like the whole story, but it's almost like watching a nature documentary or anything, but everything follows the rest of the plot, except I guess there's no songs because they have no like dialogue. They don't sing.
No, but you have a good score to it. You know what I was thinking? I said, what if this was shot like a nature documentary?
Exactly.
Could that have been? And so you're like the no dialogue part is so. It's so risky.
I don't know how you would do it. Honestly, I'm just throwing that out there as an idea, because Like at least that if you're gonna make it like live action, quote unquote, and make the animals super realistic looking, then why not just go all the way?
You know what? There's something. You know, it would be a lower budget because, grant, I'm not saying that this kind of special effects is cheap, but it would be lower budget because you're not paying Beyonce like $20 million. You're not like everything else. Like you could really market that. That movie could probably make its money back based on people being curious alone.
Right?
And if I guess you could just get David Attenborough to narrate
Hmm.
to do like those. But I think there's something. But I hope that the Little Mermaid is different.
But that's another one where like just the very setting underwater lends itself to animation. You're just giving yourself a challenge. Like again, it could be done. Anything could be done, but it is like not intuitive to do a live action movie with characters underwater like that. Because like think about Aquaman, right? Like we already got a sense of that, and that kind of to me at least looked weird.
Oh, I just saw that we're getting another. Okay, in addition, because I was curious to see who was directing The Little Mermaid. And I think it's our boy. It's our boy Rob Marshall. It's interesting. They're giving David Lowery, who he did Pete's Dragon, which is a very like of all the Disney live action remakes, that's probably the one that like won't be discovered right away. But if you discover it, you're in for. I told you when we were living together, I watched it once. I found it like charming.
I almost watched it the other day. I was very curious. So I might watch it. I might also rewatch the original one, which I haven't seen since I was like maybe 8 years old or something. But I think that kind of also brings up another point I wanted to make, which I think we've discussed in other conversations, which is that, yeah, you should make more live action remakes of the movies that weren't as successful. I think you mentioned this. What if you did a live action remake of like The Black Cauldron or of The Sword and the Stone? Yeah, like there's like lesser known properties or just they weren't as successful for whatever reason that have potential to redo them, right? Because if you make a movie, you have the most creative potential for the ones that, like, you know, like were maybe went under the radar and give them new life. Like, how are you going to top The Lion King? You're going to make The Lion King. Obviously, it's just to make money, but you're not. That movie is like one of the most cherished animated films ever made. It's considered a masterpiece. So, like, what as a creative person, if you're John Favreau, right? If you're, what can you possibly do to outdo the original one? You can't do it.
I think Disney kind of missed the boat on this, but they could have made a really good during the height of Sherlock Holmes when Benedict Cumberbatch was doing Sherlock Holmes and everyone was watching it.
The Great Mouse Detective.
I'm not saying live action. I'm just saying they could have brought that back and it would have been a really like. I think they missed the boat on that.
Hey man, one of the best live action revivals I've seen in a long time, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. That movie was awesome.
That movie was surprisingly awesome. Like I and granted, I have faith in the Lonely Island team, but I wasn't expecting it to be like Lethal Weapon or something like that. It was like akin to that. I
really liked it, and I did get a kick out of the moment where like all the Seth Rogen animated characters kind of show up at one moment, because he has done a lot of voice work over the years, and I did not really care for his Pumbaa. I feel like a lot of his Pumbaa was just kind of shitting on the original version. But
I found it weird. Like again, we can always say it's not that Billy Eichner and Seth Rogen doing Timon and Pumbaa was real. Weird. I thought like, okay, it makes sense, but I didn't understand the full-on nihilism that I'm like. I did have to say like, this is a kids movie. This isn't Joker, where it's just like, oh yeah, nothing matters. Life is meaningless, and I'm like. That's so bizarre to put in a kids movie as just like casual dialogue. That's like a nitpick that maybe that I picked up. It just bugged me.
Well, I think that a lot like DreamWorks kind of started this thing where they would cast Seth Rogen in a lot of their movies, if not him, then Jonah Hill, to kind of add that like bit of like sardonic humor into it, maybe to like bring a little more edge. Get maybe some older kids in there who like their movies. And I think Lion King, this remake, kind of does the same thing by casting Seth Rogen. And so they want a little bit of his, I guess, more like edgy humor or self-aware humor, but they kind of just throw it in there without thinking if it made any sense.
Well, you don't like. I was thinking about that with it's kind of like fan casting, and that's how I see. Like, that's how I see all these like live action. Like, who would you cast as Scar? Oh, I never thought of Ejiofor. Like, I never thought of him, and now I do. But it's like Melissa McCarthy as Ursula. Oh, that's interesting. Like fan casting.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's quite transparent why these movies are made, and they keep getting the returns, so they're going to keep on coming, but they're going to run out of properties to do, and they're going to have to eventually resort to the lesser known ones, and then we might have something to look forward to that might be an improvement.
I'll say this as a fan of Disney, they really need to step it up.
Well, I'll tell you this too. I think about all the original content they could have made with the same money they spent making all these live action remakes. I mean, yes, they made $1 billion on all of these. They spent tens if not hundreds of $1,000,000 making them. Disney used to make original live action content, right? Or like based on something, but it was like based on a book, like Holes or something. They used to actually have really good material for, I would say, like young teenagers or preteens. Like they actually had like a really like genuine, sincere like live action studio, not just like the Touchstone, but like live action Disney stuff. And so we haven't gotten that for many moons, and maybe one day we'll get back to that, where they realize there is value in making that sort of content that could be more like more worthwhile family entertainment, because it's families deserve more than just rehashing old content.
Yeah, it's gonna hit a creative critical point, but I don't think at least on the live action stuff, the pandemic might have put that on hold. But yeah, you're about to see like once again, David Lowery is doing Peter Pan. I'm curious. The man did the Green Knight. He does interesting stuff.
There was a live action Peter Pan in like 2002 or something. I forgot about that, with like Jason Isaac. But so like this kind of thing.
Oh, there's always going to be Peter Pans. There's always, I think, like as long as it's in the public domain, it's always
a million Peter Pan movies, a million Cinderella movies, and a million Pinocchio movies. Those, those will be always getting made every now and then.
But the difference, I think, with like, okay, you say Pinocchio, the Robert Zemeckis one looks like just a rehash of something that we saw. Like, okay, who would you cast as Geppetto? Tom Hanks. That's fan casting. But the Guillermo del Toro one, which I've been kind of interested in, number one, it's stop motion, but it also is going to take place in 1930s Italy, which is fascist Italy. I think that's a unique, something we've never seen before.
That's worth making and worth watching. No, I'd definitely be keeping my eye on that project. And obviously a director that has a great track record, so I'm sure that will be more worthwhile. Last thing I say about The Lion King 2, the most jarring of all these photorealistic animals I thought was Zazu, because he literally does not have lips. As you see his beak moving up and down, he's making sounds that should not be physically possible for him. Okay, so...
And now this.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. We've reached the end, Keith. We've talked about all these divided movies, all these divided trends. Here we are. Before we close shop, I did promise that I would reveal the tally for the amount of times we sided with audiences and the amount of time we sided with critics. And these are just in the regular episodes. Like, I did not count bonus episodes. But here we go. So you guessed that we would side with critics more often than audiences, but not by too wide of a margin.
That's my guess.
Okay, the percentage split between critics and audiences. We sided more often with, drum roll please, the critics. So we sided with the critics, and we sided with them 59% of the time.
Oh, okay.
Audiences 41% of the time.
Audiences how much?
So 41% of the time with audiences, 59% of the time with critics.
Okay.
So, roughly a 4-to-6 ratio there. And yeah, I like that. I think, I would like if it was a little closer together. But hey, maybe we're a little more snobby than we had initially thought we'd be.
It's not 7-3 though. It is a 6. That's what it's a little wider margin than I imagine. But you did percentage. I was kind of curious.
So the literal amount of times, and again, this is like we had 66 episodes that were not bonus episodes, and so that was 39 times with the critics, 27 times with the audiences.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, it's. I think everyone who has a podcast should have their statistics put back. It is kind of an amazing number. But yeah, no. I've been satisfied with every whatever we landed on with each movie. I've never been like I never disagreed with it. So
this has been quite a journey, my friend. But there's always like an open door there. So, whether it's Divided Films or, something else, I don't think we'll be able to stay away from the airwaves for too long.
I think we'll be seeing each other and our listeners very soon.
But thank you, everyone, for listening to all our episodes, all of our guests.
Yes, thank you.
And Keith, you edit these episodes, you turn them out so quickly. I couldn't have asked for a better podcast partner on this.
Hey, you got the guests and you picked the movies, man. I couldn't have done it without you. So,
same, man. This has been a wild ride, and I love you too, man. This has been a lot of fun. But So and then continue listening to our friends' podcasts as well. I the Duck and the Greeting Card podcast. There's lots of other great content out there too that are made by close friends of ours. So for our listeners out there, make sure you check those out too. But we'll see you sometime soon. TBD.